a number of different recordings, and you will have to answer questions on what you hear. There will be time for you to read the instructions and questions, and you will have a chance to check your work. All the recordings will be played once only. The test is in 4 sections. At the end of the test, you will be given 10 minutes to transfer your answers to an answer sheet. Now turn to section 1. You'll hear a talk between a host and a professor called Alison Downing about cocoa beans. First, you have some time to look at questions 1 to 6.
Hello and welcome to today's talk. Here with me is the famous botanist, Professor Alison Downing. So, Alison, tell us something about cocoa beans.
Cocoa beans, also called cacao beans, are the primary constituent in making chocolate, grown in tropical areas in South and Central America, West Africa and Asia. The cocoa tree is often raised on small family-owned farms. When the harvested pods are opened to expose the beans, the pulp and cocoa seeds are removed and the rind is discarded. The pulp and seeds are then piled in heaps, placed in bins or laid out on grates for several days. During this time, the seeds and pulp undergo a process called sweating, where the thick pulp liquefies as it ferments. The fermented pulp trickles away, leaving cocoa seeds behind to be collected. This is when the beans are harvested, and then the bags holding them are ready to be transported. But the most important step in processing the cocoa bean is cleaning it. Once the beans are unloaded from the railroad cars, the packages are opened and then weighed by machines. Then the pods are split, and the seeds or beans are covered with a sweet white pulp or mucilage. On arrival at the factory, the cocoa beans are sorted and put in a hopper to be cleaned more rigorously. The wet beans are then transported to a facility so they can be fermented and dried. They are fermented for 4 to 7 days and must be mixed every 2 days. They are dried for 5 to 14 days, depending on the climate conditions. The fermented beans are dried by spreading them out over a large surface and constantly raking them. Then the beans are ready to be roasted. Now, roasting takes place at a high temperature, and then the beans are boiled in a heated chamber. During the roasting process, the beans will be expanded and cracked. But prior to this, the beans are trodden and shuffled about using bare human feet. During this process, red clay mixed with water is sprinkled over the beans to obtain a finer colour, polish and protection against moulds during shipment to factories in the United States, the Netherlands, the United Kingdom and other countries. Now, back to what I was saying. After the beans are cracked, they need to be cooled. Then the roasted beans are sealed in pockets. Before you hear the rest of the conversation, you have some time to look at questions 7 to 10. Now listen and answer questions 7 to 10.
Wow, that is not a simple process, is it? But someone told me that different roasting levels of coffee can lead to different kinds of flavours.
Yes, roasting coffee transforms the chemical and physical properties of green coffee beans into roasted coffee products. The roasting process is what produces the characteristic flavour of coffee by causing the green coffee beans to change in taste. Unroasted beans contain similar, if not higher levels of acids, protein, sugars and caffeine, as those that have been roasted, but lack the taste of roasted coffee beans due to the Maillard and other chemical reactions that occur during roasting. The vast majority of coffee is roasted commercially on a large scale, but small-scale commercial roasting has grown significantly with the trend toward single-origin coffees served at specialty shops. Some coffee drinkers even roast coffee at home as a hobby in order to both experiment with the flavour profile of the beans and ensure the freshest possible roast. So here I'm going to introduce some of these roasted coffee beans and their special flavours. Now, the first crack is lighter bodied and has a higher acidity level with no obvious roast flavour and is popular for its special mild taste. This level of roast is ideal for tasting the full original character of the coffee. The green beans are raw, unroasted coffee beans. They are strictly hard beans with a smoky flavour and are slightly acidic. We've also got French roast, and the flavour that comes across in French roast coffee usually has more to do with the roasting process than the actual quality of the beans. By the time the beans are dark enough to qualify as French, most of their original flavour has dissipated. In its place come the flavours of caramelising sugar, bittersweet coffee, and often a bit of chocolate. And finally, espresso smoky. That is, coffee brewed by forcing a small amount of nearly boiling water under pressure through finely ground coffee beans. Espresso is generally thicker than coffee brewed through other methods, has a higher concentration of suspended and dissolved solids, and has creamer on top. As a result of the pressurised brewing process, the flavours and chemicals in a typical cup of espresso are very concentrated. Espresso is also the base for other drinks, such as cafe latte, cappuccino, cafe macchiato, cafe mocha, flat white or cafe americano.
That is the end of section 1. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Section 2.
You will hear the secretary of a social club telephoning a tourist information office to get information for a group visit to the town of Tidborough.
First, you have some time to look at questions 11 to 16. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 11 to 16.
Hello, this is Tidborough Tourist Office. Derek speaking. How can I help you?
Good afternoon. My name's Clara Swift. I'm the secretary of a social club and we're planning a visit to Tidborough.
Oh, yes.
So I'd like to ask you some questions, if I may, to help with our plans.
Of course. We're here to help.
Now, we're thinking of staying in the youth hostel, as we'll be a group and it's quite cheap.
Yes, and comfortable too.
But could you tell me how far outside the centre it is?
Oh, it's not too bad. It's only 1 kilometre from the station, which is very convenient, and 2 kilometres from the very centre of town. There's a frequent bus service.
That doesn't sound too bad. Actually, I've tried phoning them but had no reply.
You can check out everything you need to know if you go to www.cheapstay.com. That's their own site. It's quite new. And you could email them with your requirements directly from it.
Well, that sounds good, thank you. We'll be staying in the 3rd week of March. Will there be any special events going on then?
Yes, that includes the 22nd, doesn't it? Good. That's when the street festival is held. It's great fun. Lots going on. It's held every year.
OK.
And when that's finished, if you've any energy left, you and your group might enjoy a concert we're putting on.
Is it classical music or rock?
Well, quite a mixture, actually. The point is that it's all performed by local musicians, and between them, they'll be playing most things.
It sounds a little strange, but I guess it could be interesting. It seems we've chosen a good week to come. Is there anything else on?
Oh, yes, indeed. The City Museum, which was recently completely restored, often has interesting exhibitions. There are some weird and wonderful modern paintings at the moment. That's a good exhibition. Then, opening on March the 24th, when you'll be here, it changes to natural history. I'd recommend it.
Oh, I've made a note of that. Now, some of our group are quite young, and they may prefer to do things that they feel are more active than walking round museums and so on. What will they be able to do?
Throughout March, in fact, the sports centre is going to be closed. But the swimming pool will remain open, and there's the park for general relaxation.
That sounds all right.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 17 to 20. Now listen and answer questions 17 to 20.
And were you planning to go on any excursions while you were here?
Yes, I was going to ask you. I gather there's a very picturesque train journey out along the coast?
The Beach Express. Yes, it's lovely. It's an old-fashioned train. Not an express at all, in fact, but it chugs along, giving you marvellous views.
Does it go often?
No, it's just a tourist special, really. But it sets off in the morning at 9:30, and it's very popular, so I'd get there no later than 9:15 if I were you. The station opens at 9, so you can get a coffee or something while you wait.
It sounds lovely. And for tickets?
Well, as I say, it may be crowded at the station, so it's probably more convenient to get them beforehand from us at the tourist office. The youth hostel may sell them too. You'd have to check that.
OK, I will, thanks. How much are tickets?
£5, although students get 20% off, and if there are more than 10 of you travelling together, you get 15% off, so it's very reasonable.
Yes, that's not too bad. And is it a long ride?
Not really. I think it's about 3 hours actually in the train. You'll be back for lunch about 4 hours later. It stops twice for half an hour so you can stretch your legs, have a little stroll on one of the beaches.
I see. Well, you've been very helpful. Thank you.
Not at all. I hope you enjoy your visit. Contact us any time.
That is the end of section 2. You now have half a minute to check your answers. Section 3.
You will hear part of a talk about attending a science festival.
First, you have some time to look at questions 21 to 25. Now listen carefully and answer questions 21 to 25.
Now, I think nearly all of you have received confirmation of your school placements for next term, and as part of your activities, we will be asking you to take responsibility for promoting a school visit to the Norchester Science Festival. Of course, the head of science at your school will be aware of the festival and should have all the details of it, but all the heads of science at your schools will be looking to you to be the main organiser and motivator of a visit to the festival. They'll give you the documents you need. We hope that you will motivate pupils at your schools to take an interest in the festival. It runs for 3 days. There are day tickets and special 3-day tickets, and schools have the extra option of a 2-day ticket. We hope you will encourage your pupils to visit it on 1 or 2 days. But most important of all, we hope you will use the festival to generate a lively interest in science that will last all year round and provide the school with a lasting benefit. This will, with luck, lead to improved examination results in science subjects. And let's not forget, we hope your pupils will have a lot of fun too. Needless to say, your performance in achieving these aims will count towards your final exam grade at the end of the year. Now, let me just say a few words on why a science festival. Science is part of our everyday world in a way that is different now from before. Of course, we are used to having the benefit of scientific inventions. We are used to the aeroplane, the motor car, the space rocket, and so on. But now we live in a truly scientific age, which means one where inventions and improvements are matters of routine rather than occasional and unusual events. We have become a really scientific society. Yet we find that we are failing to interest and enthuse the young in this. Fewer young people are choosing to study science at school after the age of 16, and even fewer at university. As a result, we have fewer teachers coming into schools to teach science. And many science teachers are not teaching their specialism. For example, I know of several cases where maths is being taught by biologists and chemistry is being taught by physicists. We urgently need another 3,000 science teachers in England at least. That's why we look to you, the science teachers who are starting off your careers, to inject enthusiasm and wonder into the study of science, and we hope the Norchester Festival will help you to do this.
Before you hear the rest of the talk, you have some time to look at questions 26 to 30. Now listen and answer questions 26 to 30.
Now, enough of the background. What about the festival? There are 3 main venues where the festival events take place. These are the Millennium Library, the Town Hall, not the Town Hall itself but the Town Hall Conference Centre, and the Norchester Theatre. Now, when you are planning your visits, remember that many of the activities for younger pupils will be at the Millennium Library, and the secondary school pupils may find more to interest them in the Conference Centre. Now, just so that you have some immediate information, I'd like to mention a few of the events that are taking place this year. One event of special interest to people living in this area is called Waterworld. This is a clay model of the southeast of England, and the presenters show you the effects of rising sea levels as a result of climate change. They ask the audience to select the rise in sea level, for example 20 or 40 or 60 centimetres, and the model shows the places that would be flooded as a result. Watch out for your town Does it sink or does it swim? Transport 2050 is about transport options for our towns in the future. A number of experts will introduce the topic, and then everyone at the event will have a chance to speak and give their views. Science in a Suitcase is a comedy act by two scientists who do crazy experiments and sing songs and play the clown to large audiences every afternoon. I'm particularly looking forward to that one, which should be entertaining. Ropes and Hangings is an interactive event which will be of interest to young people, in which, after experimenting with ropes and bricks, they build a real suspension bridge. That kind of hands-on activity is always really popular. And, appealing to a different audience, there is Paper and Time, in which some experts will be showing us the techniques they use for the conservation of ancient books and manuscripts. This will obviously not be for everybody, but it should be interesting just to see how they do it. Now, let's move on to tickets and transport to the festival.
That is the end of section 3. You now have half a minute to check your answers.
Now, turn to Section 4. Section 4. In this section, you will hear an introductory lecture to a course on Southeast Asia.
First, you have some time to look at questions 31 to 40. Now, listen carefully and answer questions 31 to 40.
My name is Paul Stange. I'm coordinator of this course. It's called Southeast Asian Traditions. I'm also the author of the study guide and the course reader, and you should have those in front of you. As well as these, you'll need 2 textbooks for the course. There's the one by Osborne and there's another by Legg. I'll talk a bit more about the reading materials in a moment. Now, if you haven't got these materials, you can buy the textbooks at the university bookshop, and you can collect the study guide and the course reader from me on your way out of the lecture. The purpose of this lecture is simply orientation. What I'm going to do is introduce myself, talk you through the course, and give you some additional advice, apart from what's contained in the study guide, on dealing with the various assignments for the course. First of all, the materials. You'll find the 2 textbooks very clear, and they give a good basic coverage of the history of the region. Most of the reading materials in the reader are fairly easygoing, but I have to warn you that 2 of them are quite difficult. These are the readings by Smale and Bender, and of these 2, the one by Bender is perhaps the more challenging. But don't let that put you off, because understanding these 2 readings is important to help you develop a clearer understanding of the cultures. In other words, they'll help you acquire greater sensitivity to the differences between the various cultures in the region. Now, the course itself. The course has multiple aims. It's primarily a history course, but it's not only a history course. It is, in most respects, a cultural history course focusing on Southeast Asia. Nevertheless, the course is, as you'll see from the materials, an introduction to the Southeast Asian Studies component of the Asian Studies programme. In looking at the cultural history of Southeast Asia, there are two major influences to be considered, the Chinese and the Indian. It's important not to forget the extensive influence that these two countries have had in the region. China has been trading throughout the region since at least the 6th century, so many of its cultural and social traditions have influenced the countries in the area, and religious practices from India have helped form today's culture. So we'll be looking for the links and the connections between traditional patterns and today's developments in the region. I think you can now begin to see how these past influences might form a background for the present-day social practices. And in the same way, this course will form a basis or background for second and third year courses, with their focus on the modern period, and in particular, the economic and political situation of the region. So, that's the outline of the course. I'd like to go on now to look at what you have to do, your assignments and so on.
That is the end of section 4. You will have half a minute to check your answers.